Imagine a skeleton seated beneath a gnarled tree, moonlight glinting off bone. In its bony hands, it cradles its own skull, not as a symbol of defeat, but of reverence. There's no mourning in its hollow eyes, only a strange, quiet understanding. This is not death, but transformation. What once shattered has been gathered again, not to be hidden, but held, studied, honored. Life will break you. That is not a threat. It's a guarantee. Illness, failure, loss, betrayal, aging. None of us get through untouched. And yet, being broken does not mean being ruined. There's a profound difference between being broken and being beyond repair. The paradox lies here. Sometimes, the very act of breaking is what opens us to growth. Pain does not always signal the end of something. Often, it marks the beginning of deeper self-awareness. True resilience isn't about becoming invincible. It's not about being untouched by hardship, nor wearing a mask of endless strength. Real resilience is learning how to break well. It is the courage to face your shattered pieces without shame, to hold the skull in your hands and say, "This, too, is me." Psychiatrist Carl Jung called this the journey toward integrating the shadow self, the parts of ourselves we fear, reject, or ignore. He believed that healing and wholeness require us not to discard our darkness, but to confront it, understand it, and weave it back into the story of who we are. Jung's insight reframes suffering not as a detour from growth, but as its very soil. To become whole, we must meet ourselves in the wreckage and choose to rebuild not in spite of it, but through it. In this light, breaking is not a failure. It is a form of initiation. The cultural myth of invincibility society idolizes the strong, silent type, the stoic, emotionless figure who never falters. From Hollywood heroes to corporate leaders, we're conditioned to equate toughness with silence, self-denial, and unwavering control. This myth suggests that vulnerability is weakness, and emotional expression is a threat to authority or masculinity. But the cost of this illusion is steep. Psychology and neuroscience tell a different story. Research from the American Psychological Association reveals that men who adhere strictly to traditional masculinity norms are more likely to experience depression, substance abuse, and suicide. In fact, men die by suicide nearly 4 times more often than women in the U.S., with emotional suppression being a significant factor. Neuroscientific studies have also shown that chronic emotional repression increases stress hormone levels, weakens the immune system, and raises the risk of heart disease. This obsession with invulnerability doesn't create strength. It breeds fragility. Emotions pushed underground don't disappear. They fester. The result? Emotional breakdowns, relational disconnection, and a loneliness epidemic. According to a 2023 report from the U.S. Surgeon General, over half of American adults report feeling lonely, a figure exacerbated by the fear of appearing vulnerable or weak. Carl Jung offered a more enduring vision of strength: integration. He argued that wholeness is achieved not by denying pain or fear, but by confronting and assimilating them. True resilience comes from facing our shadow, the parts we're taught to hide, and finding strength in that reckoning. By clinging to the myth of invincibility, we manufacture brittle selves. But by embracing the full spectrum of our humanity, we unlock a deeper, more sustainable kind of power, one rooted in truth, not illusion. Understanding the shadow self. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow refers to the hidden or denied parts of the self. qualities, desires, and experiences we repress because they conflict with our self-image or societal norms. It is not inherently evil or dangerous, but rather the psychological basement where we store aspects we refuse to acknowledge. Jung believed that everyone has a shadow, and to become whole, we must face it. Imagine a skeleton cradling a cracked skull in its hands, a powerful metaphor for the shadow self. The skull's fractures represent emotional wounds, fragmented identities, and long-buried truths. Just as a skeleton cannot deny the skull's damage, we too carry our brokenness, however hidden. These cracks form from years of repression, denial, and the weight of cultural expectations. A child taught that anger is bad learns to suppress rage. A teenager shamed for vulnerability learns to wear emotional armor. Over time, these disowned pieces slip into the unconscious, forming the shadow. People fear their shadows because confronting them means reopening old wounds. The shadow might hold shame from past failures, unresolved grief, or the anger we were never allowed to express. It demands we look at the parts of ourselves we'd rather forget, the jealous, selfish, or broken parts. And that can be painful. It also forces us to grieve the life unlived, the creativity we stifled, the courage we buried, the potential we abandoned to fit in. Yet within this darkness lies immense power. The shadow is not just a vault of pain. It is also the source of buried strength, insight, and authenticity. When we face our shadow with compassion and courage, it becomes a gateway to transformation. By integrating it, we reclaim lost parts of ourselves, becoming more complete and self-aware. Wholeness is not perfection, but acceptance. The realization that our light and darkness together form the full truth of who we are. The cracked skull does not need to be fixed. It needs to be honored. The three false masks we wear. Carl Jung believed that our psyche wears masks, or personae, false selves crafted to help us survive in society. But over time, these masks can turn from tools into prisons. Among the most common are the achievement mask, the stoic mask, and the martyr mask. Each conceals vulnerability, yet their long-term wear corrodes our mental and physical health. The achievement mask presents as polished success. On social media, it looks like curated vacations, perfect bodies, and milestone after milestone. Beneath it lies an addiction to validation. According to a 2022 study by the American Psychological Association, 60% of young adults feel their self-worth is tied to their achievements. Chronic stress, burnout, and anxiety disorders are often hidden behind this mask. The body keeps score. High cortisol levels, insomnia, and even heart disease can follow when the need to perform never switches off. The stoic mask is the armor of emotional suppression. It speaks in phrases like, "I'm fine," and "it could be worse." Stoicism, in its healthy form, promotes inner strength, but the false stoic mask silences real emotion. Men, particularly, are taught to suppress feelings, contributing to alarming statistics. Men are nearly 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women, CDC 2023. Forced positivity, often encouraged in workplaces and wellness circles, and the overuse of antidepressants and anxiety medications can further numb the psyche instead of healing it. The martyr mask appears noble: selfless service, tireless caregiving, spiritual devotion. But often, it cloaks resentment, boundary violations, and burnout. Chronic self-sacrificers may find themselves unacknowledged and bitter. A 2020 meta-analysis linked caregiver burnout with higher risks of depression, immune dysfunction, and even early mortality. Spiritual bypassing, using religious or spiritual language to avoid emotional truth, can deepen the disconnect from one's inner needs. Jung never suggested destroying these masks. Instead, he advocated dialoguing with them through shadow work. This involves 4 steps. 1. Naming the mask. This is my achievement mask. 2. Tracing its origin. I learned this from needing to impress my parents to be loved. 3. Thanking it. You helped me survive, but I no longer need you in every room. 4th, setting boundaries. I now choose spaces where I can show up whole, not perfect. The masks are not enemies. They are misunderstood allies. By integrating them through shadow work, we move from performance to authenticity, from suppression to wholeness. The confrontation with the shadow, the moment of facing the skeleton holding the skull, is a powerful metaphor for confronting the shadow, the hidden, often repressed parts of ourselves. In this chilling yet sacred encounter, we stand before the raw truth of our inner landscape. The skeleton represents what we have tried to bury: pain, shame, regret. The skull, a symbol of mortality and awareness, asks us to look deeply, not just at death, but at life unexamined. 3 difficult truths arise during this confrontation. Reopened childhood wounds. Old memories resurface. Moments of abandonment, fear, or emotional neglect. These early experiences shaped how we protect ourselves, often unconsciously. In the shadow's light, we realize these wounds still influence our choices, relationships, and sense of worth. They demand acknowledgement, not avoidance. Disowned parts that must be reclaimed. We see traits we rejected: anger, vulnerability, desire, ambition. Labeled as bad or unacceptable, we cast them out to survive socially or emotionally. Yet they never disappeared. They became shadow. To become whole, we must reclaim these aspects, understanding their original purpose and restoring them to conscious use. Grieving the unlived life. As we face the shadow, we see paths not taken, dreams denied, parts of ourselves we never expressed. This grief is heavy, but necessary. It opens space for clarity and redirection, asking, how can I live more fully now? Science supports the transformative power of conscious shadow work. Studies in neuroscience show that when traumatic memories are brought into awareness and processed, especially through therapy or mindfulness, brain regions associated with fear, like the amygdala, become less reactive, while areas involved in reasoning and emotional regulation, like the prefrontal cortex, strengthen. This rewiring enables healing, resilience, and integration. Importantly, the shadow is not a threat. It is an invitation. To face it is to accept the call to wholeness. What once seemed like darkness reveals itself as potential. In choosing to look within, we become more authentic, less fragmented. To those standing at the threshold, be courageous. The skeleton does not haunt. It waits, not to harm, but to hand us back what was lost. In the heart of our darkness lies the key to our light. The journey inward, though difficult, leads to profound healing and the freedom to live fully and truthfully. The 5 stages of becoming unbreakable. Becoming unbreakable is not a linear ascent, but a cyclical process, an ongoing spiral of collapse, discovery, and reinvention. Each time life tests us, we pass through these 5 stages again, not as a sign of weakness, but as proof of growth. The goal is not to avoid being broken, but to return from each breaking stronger, more self-aware, and more integrated than before. Stage 1. The shattering. The journey begins when something vital collapses: identity, relationships, beliefs. This is the shattering, a moment when our internal model of reality is disrupted beyond repair. Neuroscience describes this in terms of predictive coding. Our brains are constantly forecasting outcomes based on past experiences. When those predictions fail dramatically, the brain enters a state of high alert, scrambling to remap its understanding of the world. In this neurological chaos lies the seed of transformation. The shattering is painful, but sacred. It signals the death of illusion, a rupture through which truth can emerge. Stage 2. The gathering in the aftermath. Many rush to repair what was broken, but this stage demands restraint. The gathering is about sitting with our shattered pieces and letting the grief wash through. True healing requires presence. To mourn properly is to honor what was lost and make space for something new. Rushing to fix, distract, or move on short-circuits the process. The psyche cannot be patched. It must be heard. This stage invites us to gather ourselves slowly through silence, journaling, solitude, and rituals of stillness. It's not passive. It's the active reclamation of emotional truth. Stage 3. The examination. With the fragments in hand, we begin the examination. This is the forensic phase. Honest, relentless inquiry into the root of the break. Why did this fracture occur? What wounds from childhood, societal conditioning, or acts of self-betrayal fed its formation? Tools like dream mapping and guided introspection can uncover patterns hidden beneath conscious awareness. Jungian shadow work is vital here. This is the phase of truth-telling, where we unearth the uncomfortable, not to blame, but to understand. Stage 4. The rebuilding. Out of insight comes structure. The rebuilding is when we deliberately choose new ways of being. We replace reactivity with response, chaos with ritual. Habits are rewired, boundaries set, and core values reinforced. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, is our ally here. With repeated conscious effort, neural pathways strengthen. This isn't just emotional healing, it's biological transformation. We're not merely coping, we're becoming redesigned. Stage 5. The integration. Finally, we reach the integration. This is where pain is alchemized into wisdom, and the self begins to feel whole. In psychology, this is known as post-traumatic growth. In Jungian terms, it's individuation, the unification of all parts of the psyche. Here, the brain achieves a kind of neural harmony. Metaphorically and neurologically, we come into resonance. We accept our scars, not as signs of defeat, but as the texture of wisdom. This cycle repeats throughout life, but each time we pass through it, we become less brittle, more flexible, unbreakable, not because we're impervious to harm, but because we've learned how to heal deeper, faster, and wiser. Historical and personal examples of mastering breakage. Throughout history, many visionary leaders and creators have not only endured suffering, but transmuted their fractures into profound strength and purpose. Their lives reveal that mastery does not come in spite of breakage, but through it. Nelson Mandela's decades in prison represent one of the most powerful examples of shadow work in modern history. Stripped of freedom and dignity, Mandela confronted the rage and bitterness that could have consumed him. Instead of succumbing, he used those long years in confinement to cultivate patience, inner discipline, and empathy. By facing his inner demons, he emerged not only as a political leader, but as a moral one, capable of forgiving his oppressors and guiding a nation toward reconciliation. Similarly, artist Frida Kahlo's life was marked by physical trauma and emotional upheaval. Crippled by polio and later a devastating bus accident, she endured chronic pain for most of her life. Yet her suffering became the canvas for revolutionary self-expression. Through raw, intimate paintings, Kahlo turned private agony into public truth, reframing pain as a form of power and identity. Carl Jung, the great psychoanalyst, also underwent a period of intense psychological turmoil, a near breakdown that shattered his previous worldview. Rather than retreating, Jung delved into the chaos, exploring dreams, archetypes, and the unconscious. His descent became the foundation for analytical psychology and the concept of the shadow, a core idea in understanding human wholeness. These figures reveal a universal truth. Mastery often begins at the point of fracture. True leaders and creators do not deny their pain. They descend into it, wrestle with it, and emerge transformed. Their lives remind us that breakage is not the end of the story. It is where real alchemy begins. The invitation to radical self-honesty and wholeness. Imagine standing before your own skeleton, the bare truth of who you are, every fracture and flaw exposed. Not as something to be hidden, but something to be honored. This is the invitation to radical self-honesty, to stop running from your humanity, to stop performing perfection, and instead, to look directly at what hurts, what shames, what you've tried to bury. Your brokenness is not your enemy. It is a doorway. Shadow work, the sacred act of facing the disowned parts of yourself, is not a punishment. It's a return to wholeness. Each piece of you that you reclaim, each truth you own without flinching, becomes a bone you hold with reverence, with love. You were never broken beyond repair. The world may have tried to shatter you, but the moment you choose to hold your pain instead of avoiding it, to integrate rather than exile, is the moment nothing and no one can break you again. This is where true power begins. Not in armor, but in authenticity. Not in invincibility, but in your willingness to be seen as fully human, beautiful, messy, whole. Peace doesn't come from perfection. It comes from embracing yourself exactly as you are. Stand with your skeleton. Own every part of your story. This is the work. This is the freedom. Call to action resilience isn't about bouncing back to who we were. It's about becoming who we're meant to be. True strength is forged in the fire of transformation, and transformation requires us to confront the shadows we've long avoided. Our pain, our fears, our failures, these are not signs of weakness, but invitations to grow. Shadow integration is the courageous act of facing what's hidden, and in doing so, reclaiming our wholeness. Your cracks are not flaws to be hidden. They are maps, guides to the deepest parts of you that are waiting to be healed, honored, and embraced. Within every wound lies a lesson, a story, a spark of gold. When you stop running from your shadows and begin to walk with them, you open the door to profound resilience and authenticity. So I invite you, begin or deepen your shadow work journey. Whether through journaling, therapy, meditation, or simply honest self-reflection, take that first step. Trust that what you find in the dark will lead you to the light. You are not broken. You are breaking open. And within those fractures lies your gold, unique, radiant, and ready to shine. Go find it. The journey is yours to begin.